So I've been reading this book, Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palme Dutt. And it's an amazing read. Um, it explains a lot of what's going on today. And eventually I'm going to do an analysis on this book as soon as I get done reading it. Um, Usually when I'm reading through this, I take notes in the margins, but there's this section in the book where um, all I could do was just underline everything that he was saying because of how relevant it is to what's going on today. So in this section, he's talking about how once capitalism reaches a certain point of decay, progress begins to go backwards, and scientists begin to admit to there being a God. And usually, this acceptance of God amongst the bourgeois scientists paves the way for, quote, all the quackeries and charlatries of chauvinism, racial theories, anti Semitism, Aryan grandmothers, mystic swastikas, divine missions, strongman saviors, and all the rest of the nonsense through which alone capitalism today can try to maintain its hold a little longer. All this nonsense may appear on a cool view when some particularly wild ebullition of a Hitler or a Goebbels about blood and the joy of the dagger and the Germanic man and the primeval forest is produced, as highly irrational and even insane. But in fact, it is as completely rational and calculated for the present purposes of capitalism as a machine gun or a Zion-Viev letter election. There is method in the madness, for capitalism can no longer present any rational defense, any progressive role, any ideal whatever to reach the masses of the population. Therefore, it can only endeavor to save itself on a wave of obscurantism, holding out fantastic symbols and painted substitutes for ideals in order to cover the reality of the universally hated money bags. Fascism is the final reduction of this process to a completely worked out technique. In unity with this revolt against science goes a general cultural reaction, the revolt against culture, the revolt against education, the cutting down of education in all capitalist countries, the increasing reactionary discipline and militarization in the universities and schools, and the final and complete symbol of the culminating stage revealed by fascism, the burning of the books. End quote. So, how exactly is this relevant to today? Well, let's go ahead and unpack that. So when Rajani is talking about scientists adopting the belief in God and this paving the way for all the quackeries, Aryan grandmothers, mystic swastikas, etc., he's talking about the breaking down of rationality within the bourgeois class. So within science, science isn't only used for proving, disproving a bunch of different hypotheses and theories. It's also used for creating new technology and machinery that can be used to replace workers. Under a capitalist society, however, as you begin to replace more workers with machinery and more workers lose their jobs, and then you have more and more of the population unemployed, not making money, not using that money to then go back through and purchase product, you then begin to see a breakdown of capitalism. It stops working. Whereas this machinery under a socialist society could be used to eliminate monotonous jobs, free up more of the workforce, provide all of the necessary goods for humanity, and again, this is a society that is supposed to be designed without money in mind, so it would be able to provide everything for human beings. In the next section, when he refers to like a Hitler's or a Goebbels, talking about blood, the joy of the dagger, the Germanic man, and the primeval forest, etc., He's talking about how as things get worse for society, um, and the bourgeois start coming up with their different scapegoats, these things that under any other circumstance which appears irrational then starts to become rational under a society that is beginning to crumble apart. In the US, we can kind of see that today with the deification of the founding fathers. Um, the symbology of, the American flag, the bald eagle, all this other absolute nonsense, as well as tying that in with nationalism. And then weaponizing that nationalism in order to prepare the working class to go to war with other members of the working class. Because at the end of the day, when capitalism gets to this point where there's just too many, or what the bourgeois would refer to as the surplus population, when we get to this point and they're not making as much money, they want us to go to war. They want us to kill off one another, decrease the quote unquote surplus population, so that way there's a more even distribution of funds to everyone. Well, even in their twisted fucking minds. In the next section, when he's talking about how the only way capitalism can endeavor to save itself is by holding out all these fantastic symbols in order to cover up the reality of the universally hated money bags. He's talking about how the bourgeois go through and they find all these different scapegoats, and all these different mythological reasons to present to the working class in order to hide the fact that the bourgeois themselves are actually the ones who are the cause of all of our problems. You see this today with the scapegoating of illegal immigrants in this country, which, if we're really to be honest about this, all white people in this country are illegal, which, when I think about it, if the Republicans had really gone through and repealed DACA, that would have been so goddamn funny, because then the land back movement started by the natives would have gained so much traction and would have been perfect grounds for kicking all the white people out of the US. In the last section, when Rajani is talking about how this general revolt against science usually goes hand in hand with the cultural reaction of the revolt against culture, revolt against education, cutting down of education, and finally the burning of the books. We actually do see this going on today in the US with the whole culture wars that the conservatives started. You can see their revolt against education. They want to privatize education and cut down on public education. And then finally, when we're talking about the burning of the books, you see this today with the whole book ban, and even with some of the alt-right going through and just outright burning books. And this concludes my very short analysis on this very short section of Rajani Palme Dutt's book, Fascism and Social Revolution. I think this section in whole was probably about a page long. Again, once I am finished reading the book, I will do a more thorough analysis of the entire book. Just based on the fact that that analysis took as long as it did. Once I finish this book, it's probably going to be a very long analysis, which I may end up breaking down into multiple sections. I hope you guys liked it. Thank you.